This whole coronavirus crisis began for us in Cienfuegos on the 10th of March when we checked out of Cuba. At the start, we weren't affected at all, being in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no one around. But then a Cuban military vessel told us we had to go right there and then. No question about whether we had food, fuel or water, just go now. So we sailed to the Dominican Republic at an average speed of less than 2 knots for the next 9 days, only to get kicked out the very next day. We then sailed back to Haiti, only to get kicked out 2 hours later. We learned an important lesson: no sailing to the mainland. So we sailed for an isolated island group southeast of Jamaica. On the way we ran out of gas for cooking, but we were in luck when we arrived with plenty of wood on these tiny little islands for a fire. It was completely deserted, so I thought we could stay here until the world became normal again. But fishermen started turning up more and more each day, which made Margarita uneasy, being the only woman around for miles and miles. So we set sail once more, this time to a very remote reef, 272 nautical miles off the Nicaraguan coast. On arriving, we were lucky to find a tiny cay with some wood for a fire. We had finally found a place that seemed too remote for anyone to even bother about, and hence wait out this madness of COVID-19. But the Colombian Coast Guard turned up a day and a half later, and we had to go.
We asked if we could stay one night so we could have some rest, but the next day we still had to leave. But our problem was where to go.
Yeah, we still did not know where we could have our quarantine on anchor. But I did realise something. We still had a friend in Panama. His name's Stuart and his partner Steph on the boat Matador, and they apparently were stuck in Shelter Bay. Now, perhaps if he could make some internal inquiries, he'd know definitively if we could stay on anchor in quarantine in Bocas. So we madly text the details on our inReach to Tampa Dad, Bill, to find that out, because he was having a hard time getting the information on the internet. So we're still waiting to know what's going on. So, look, the Colombian Coast Guard was so nice. I didn't want to be bad, but we really had no choice. So as they were leaving, I whacked on the radar and I measured their speed when they were leaving the reef, and they were doing about 8 knots. And then I worked out, because they were apparently here doing maintenance on the lighthouse, and that took about 4 to 6 hours. So, and this was the most furthest reef in their cycle. So I figured how long it'd take them to get back to San Andreas while servicing all the other lighthouses along the way. And I reckon that by the time they did all of that and they got into San Andreas and fueled up, got some food, it'd take them about 6 days to get back out to us. So I reckon we had about 6 or 7 days. Margarita wanted less, but
because I didn't want to put ourselves in trouble because they were so good to us, and then
we would definitely feel bad if they came back.
If they came back and they had to be mean because it's their job.
Yeah, we allowed them no opportunity. Yeah. So it was a tough one. I didn't want to do it, but we had to. So the best thing to conquer seasickness and having Margarita in a miserable state is to get her out and go snorkeling.
Margarita spots a good-sized shark and she is off. I sure hope she can equalise and do some free diving, because she absolutely loves it, and that will cheer her up no end.
I'm just scaring them away from you.
Spearfishing with a beautiful bodyguard? I think this is heaven, people. The reef is still good here. Not dramatic, but certainly more alive than anywhere else. Probably the best in the Western Caribbean, but it has been fished out. How's it going?
The left keeps giving me problems.
It seems that Margarita just can't get a break. With all the ear exercises she does on the boat, the breathing, the expanding the cheeks, the flushing the nose with the water, tilting back and holding her breath and doing this, I had hoped that she'd be able to, well, the ear problem would solve itself and she'd be able to go diving, because really when you're on a boat in the middle of the reef, in the middle of nowhere, I mean, what else can you do? I mean, you can lie in the sun, but it's great to jump in the water, enjoy it. And she loves that sort of thing. So if you try and look at it from her point of view, she's stuck in this paradise and she can't actually enjoy it. I mean, sure, she can swim on the top, but it must be very frustrating when she's got such a good breath hold and she just can't go down in the water. So looking from her point of view, she's run out of seasickness pills a long time ago. So even in the mildest sailing conditions, she gets seasick on monohulls. On catamarans, no. Go figure. The whole boat is dirty. We're living on less than 3 litres of water per person per day. Everything is dirty. All our clothes are dirty. All the sheets are dirty. All the couches are dirty. Pillows, everything. They're all salty. Things just get salty over a period of time. And if you've ever jumped into a salty bed at night, it's moist because the salt absorbs the moisture at night when the dew comes down. And you just don't feel clean. It's just itchy. I mean, I don't really worry about it, but, you know, there's a big difference between clean sheets and salty sheets. So all of these things, we don't know where we're going to be in the next 5 days. All of these are weighing down on her. Now, I'm a bit of a roll with the punches sort of person, you know, water off a duck's back. So it doesn't really worry me so much. I always thought cruising was about external factors, get the boat ready, sailing, wind, weather, storm, tuck in behind a reef, you're safe, and it's all good. But this internal stuff is by far, far more severe, and we're in a position where I cannot solve the problem because we're still stuck on a boat. We still don't know a place to go. We just still don't have a place to go to. And when I'm trying to put my mind into Margarita's mind, it must be just awful. And then, to top it off, be on the boat with me, who's as happy as Larry and as a pig in shit. It must be supremely grating. So there is an absence of videos when people are sad and unhappy and they're fighting, because when you're fighting, you don't want to, or you're unhappy, you don't want to film. So it's a bit distorted, but I just wanted to let you know, because there's a lot of people probably watching that have never sailed before. It's difficult on a boat in the best of circumstances. But if you pile all those other things that I mentioned, it can be really, really difficult.
It's time for the pig to roll in the shit. With little food left and no gas to cook on our boat, our day revolves around getting enough food and cooking it on the island. The trouble is, there is few fish. It is a long day to get any food and not much footage to show you guys. Most of the time I'm swimming big distances wondering what coral would taste like. There's a crab, but it's female, so we'll let her be. To get one crab involves me looking into about 80 holes or crevices, which is about 4 hours worth, but sometimes averages are way out. Another female crab? I think they are teasing me. And there's the male. I was pulling and I was losing him to the back of the cave, so I thought I'd try the old female doing the opposite trick. I started pushing it to the back of the cave, and lo and behold, the crab walked right out of the cave, spear and all. Top stuff. And yes, it's worth it. Food is a great morale builder. I would have been pushed off the boat a long time ago if it was cold beans from a can. It was a lucky day. This crayfish was just sitting there out in the open and didn't struggle at all. It was so placid I thought I'd just put it straight in the anchor box. Big mistake.
It's not bad being stranded. We put the mud crab or the crab straight on the coals and it's excellent like that. Oh, it's really good. And look at the crayfish. The crayfish is nicely brown. Oh, it's awesome. So Margarita is going to be so happy.
You're cutting my head. You decapitated.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The weather is getting increasingly squally, with the wind getting less and less. Soon the squalls will be coming from any direction, which is not good for hanging off the arse end of a reef. See how there are so few fish? On a healthy reef, in just this dive, I ought to see schoolmaster snappers, grey snappers, maybe 2 or 3 groupers, and perhaps a mutton snapper on the sand. But there is none of these fish left here, just small tangs and durgans and tiny reef fish. It's very sad. Since there are no fish, I am using Margarita's gun, which is not too powerful, good for crays and crabs. It's a sad state of affairs when we have to shoot triggerfish. These triggerfish are very wise here and keep a long way away. It took a long time for this one to finally come closer. Margarita's gun will not go through the tough skin of the triggerfish. There is only one place to shoot. Through the eyes, people. Not very nice, but I'm not here to make friends. It looks like it has scales, but it's a very thick, durable skin. Granted, my knives are not great, but the only way to get through the skin is with the point. Save the red meat for the curry we are making, and half the rest of the fish I'm going to do something different. No, Plucky, you can't make new blades for your broken fins. I was thinking it. Cut the fish into uniform strips of say 1/2 inch thick, and then mix in a pot of salt, sugar and chili powder to taste, and then dry in the sun and wind. Okay, this is a backup just in case we have bad weather or we're stuck at some other place and we can't get food. You might think it's a bit stupid. There's 2 frigate birds up there. They'll be joined by 6 to 8 others later on. These 2 have been eyeing this off quite carefully. There's chili powder on them, so they probably won't like it. But after a couple of hours, they go quite hard and dry, and they also stick to the net. So I'm banking on that they won't be able to actually swallow it because it's just too hard, because all of the stuff that they eat is soft. So, but I do suspect in the morning there might be some missing because they might have a test run. Anything to improve morale is important. Every girl loves battered fish, so this should be a winner. That's triggerfish. Yeah. Is it a bit like chicken in the consistency? Well, I suppose that's it in the compliments department. Well, I like the deep fried triggerfish. Just make sure you season the batter because the flesh has very little taste. We have our very own sandy beach. It's not much, but it does have some redeeming features. Check out the colour of the water. That's really nice water. But it's not all fun and games and rigorous testing of beaches. We had some maintenance to do. I am all for safety and proper work clothes for the job at hand. This seems to me adequate protection.
So basically every night before we went to sleep, we have the security bars on the hatch and the companionway, and radar goes on 20-minute watch. Now, that's all well and good. We feel safe and secure. Well, I got up in the middle of the night, and instead of using the toilet where I have to pump, I snuck out the back, and I was hanging a whiz, and I saw some lights. It wasn't some lights, one light. It was a flashlight, and it was intermittent. It would go on and off, and occasionally it would flash up to us. There was almost a full moon. It was a brilliant night. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I was watching them for a while, and the light would go on and then off. And it was definitely coming closer, but at an angle. And I'm going, oh, I'll give it another 5 more minutes. Oh, I'll give it another 5, because I didn't want to wake Margarita, because...
Well,
look,
I'm glad it didn't wake me up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sleeping at all, and I'm going to be doing my surveillance thing at night.
yeah, it would have done more harm than good.
I wouldn't be at ease at all.
And it's so difficult to judge distances. Now, I reckon it was only about a mile, maybe even less than a mile, but maybe it was a bit more, you don't know. Nothing was picked up by the radar at all. Now, I know boats, fiberglass boats, wooden boats, don't have a good radar signature. It's very hard to spot them. But I thought at least within a mile or a mile and a half, even with it wavering around, you'd pick up the outboard motor or the side of the boat. But no. So that's just a bit of a warning to people. Like, I knew radar was pretty poor in that regard, but I didn't know it was that poor. So I reckon it's only going to pick up fishing vessels if they're trying to sneak up on us when they're very close. So we're just going to have to make sure everything's bolted up and be ready. But having said that, I saw the boat and I quickly snuck inside, and I got all the guns all ready. I didn't load them or anything. I had the flare guns. I had every wasp spray, and I just waited. But eventually the light went out, and I couldn't see. With the binoculars, I still couldn't. It was a brilliant moonlight. I still couldn't see it. So, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I didn't really sleep that night. But in the morning, I think I might have dozed off because nothing was happening over there. I just went back to bed. And in the morning, when I got up, it probably was light for another 20 minutes beforehand. They must have left then, because just before sunup, when I was looking, I could not see them. So that was not a good sign that this place was getting visited by boats, and we can't even tell on the radar
if they're
here.
coming close or not.
So yeah, I just had to be a bit more cautious, because we are a lone boat. And look, if some fisherman down on his luck wanted to have a go, well, it's sort of like we're a sitting duck.
It's time to check up on the drying fish. Excellent. None have been taken and none have been bird shut on. So it's all bloody good.
Well, that's not too bad. Now, believe it or not, the best way to eat this, well, I found the best way. I mean, it's good with, you can just chew it like a jerky, but this doesn't taste particularly good because it's not the greatest fish. But what you can do is, as you're boiling up rice, so you start boiling the rice, and as the water starts to go into the rice, you throw a few pieces of this on the top of the rice and put the lid on, and you leave it for an hour, and it softens this up. It sort of reconstitutes it a bit. It'd be better with onion and garlic, but we ran out of that a long time ago. And you just eat it like that. And you really only need, per person, 3 or 4 pieces. And that's it, because they're actually quite thick in the first place. Alright, well, there's our backup. Okay, well, we've got this. We had a squall come through. We had a couple of squalls last night, just a few drops of rain only. This tells me that there's going to be strong wind in a day or two, and that's confirmed by the reports. It's probably best we get out of here and head to a place called Serrana Bank or Roncador Keys. That'll be definitely in the San Andreas weather, and then I can rely on the forecast definitively here, because here I'm not so sure. So if you're not sure and there's strong wind coming and you're in a sort of an untenable situation, well, we've got to go.
Last minute cook up before we leave tomorrow. When you are low on fuel, the quickest and I think the best way of cooking crab is straight on the coals for 2 or 3 minutes on each side, cooked in its own juices. Bloody awesome. And that's what happens when you stuff around in the morning. This squall built up. This is not the perfect time to leave the reef, but I've sussed out most of these reefs. The only problem is, 30-foot bottom, occasionally, and then it goes up to say 15 feet, but occasionally there's an explosion of a bombing and they come up much higher. Now, I haven't checked all the reefs, but I'm just trying to go through here. This is part of the uncertain sort of weather we're going to get in the next day or two. We've got that trough in the Gulf of Mexico and possibly might lead to a low. It's sucking in all the wind from the northwest Caribbean. Jamaica's going to get 30 knots tonight. And this place is not a good place to anchor in 30 knots because we've got the full moon. Well, full moon was yesterday. We're going to have big waves and the tide is going to be going over the reefs. There's no protection. So there's a chance we'll drag, but let's just go south. We're going to go about 140 miles to a place called Serrano Bank, hopefully. I don't know if it's a good anchorage or not, but the winds are 17 to 22 tonight, he said. Well, that's better than 30. Well, this isn't going to dump on us. It's not going to give us any increased wind. It's just going to make it difficult for me to see. That's all right. I sort of can see. We have no guide for the next reef, so we will have to be careful with the dodgy charts and our position because the reefs have so far been out by up to 1.5 miles. Bye-bye, Nuevo Bank. It's going to be a rolly one. The wind's going to be at 135. It's so much better if it's at 110 or 120, but we want to get to this Serrano Bank before tomorrow night, which should be easy, but last time we were supposed to get Nuevo Bank at like 2 p.m. easily, and we got in at 6, so here's hoping. We had really good sailing during the night and we were early. Too early. This is pretty overcast. This is the most I've had an overcast, in the last 3-4 months. Maybe 6 months. So this is not good to get in the reef. We're about 4 mile out. There's a cay over there. Look, it might even actually be a substantial cay because I've just noticed there's a few seabirds, so maybe they're using it to nest. I'm not sure. But all of a sudden there were more birds, so it's certainly not the greatest to go into the reef. As it is, we're heading east into the reef. We should be waiting until midday or 1 p.m. so the sun is actually above or behind us going in through. Hopefully this will burn off. Yesterday it was a little bit like this, maybe about 20% of this, and it burned off by about 10. So here's hoping. But we're just going to gradually go in and then, look, if I can't do it, I'll just heave to and wait for it to burn off. And if it doesn't burn off, well, we just go to the next reef and that's another day away. And hopefully it'll be clear skies then. It's super easy to heave to. On this tack, just haul the staysail over to the port side, take a bit of power out of the main because the staysail is quite small, then adjust the steering until it keeps to somewhere between 40 and 60 degrees to the wind, and then bungee cord the wheel. Hope to on the other tack because we were actually drifting onto the reef, so now we're drifting away. And let's just wait it out. Let's hope it's not too long. It looks like it's going to be a long time.